This is the Geely Okavango, which is the Chinese automaker's biggest offering in the Philippines. While the Okavango presents itself as an SUV, its practicality and interior space are actually more in line with an MPV, which essentially broadens its appeal to Filipino consumers. And it's no wonder then that the Okavango has become a sensational hit in the Philippine market. From a styling perspective, the Geely Okavango's design is more on the conservative side of things, which is in stark contrast to something like the Geely Coolray. Still, it's a good-looking crossover SUV, with its distinct expanding Cosmos grille, standard LED headlights, which are adaptive matrix LEDs in this Urban Plus variant, along with its well-proportioned side and rear end. And because of its conservative design, it doesn't have a line that's out of place. And as a result, the Okavango's design looks clean and elegant, though it's not a design that you would consider as exciting. As for its interior, the design is reasonably stylish, though compared to the Geely Coolray, the materials used here are much less premium. There's a soft-touch leatherette section sa kanyang dashboard, but the rest of the interior is dominated by hard plastics. Still, at least compared sa Toyota Innova, mas marami naman itong soft-touch surfaces. And being the Urban Plus variant, this comes with a fully digital gauge cluster, while a 10.25-inch touchscreen comes as standard on all variants, and it's user-friendly enough to use. And while the screen is large, the screen quality isn't as good as its digital gauges, because the infotainment system easily washes out under harsh sunlight. Unfortunately, it also doesn't come with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, just like every other Geely model out there. Now, dumako naman tayo sa kanang rear seat space. So as you're gonna see sa Geely Okavango na ito, you have a lot of room. So this seat is in my driving position. Ito yung driving position ko na to sa adjustment na to. And I have tons of legroom, plenty of headroom din. And ang maganda dito is you have 3 individual chairs. Hindi siya yung nakasplit in a 60-40 fashion. So what that means is, pwede kong i-adjust to mag-isa, and at the same time, itong nasa gitnang upuan, pwede ko rin i-adjust. Yun nga lang, ang downside of having 3 individual chairs is that wala kang armrest dito. So, kung gusto mo ng ganong feature, you're out of luck with the Geely Okavango. But as far as space is concerned, this is the best MPV SUV thing basta sa segment na ito. Even compared to the Toyota Innova, this is the best at carrying 3 people ng magkakadikit because of these 3 individual seats nga, since hindi ka ngayon parang nag-aagaw sa shoulder room. Other amenities, meron ka ditong rear aircon vents, and then you also have your own third zone climate control. So, dalawa sa front, isa dito sa likod. Ang ayaw ko lang, to be honest, is yung kanyang operation, which is itong touch panel dito. It's hit or miss sa totoo lang yung pag-detect niya ng daliri mo. And you know, mas maganda talaga kung if there are hard buttons at the back. Either way, you have a good amount of amenities dito sa likod. You also have this large panoramic sunroof. And yeah, it's a really nice place to be in pagdating dito sa kanang second row seats. So ngayon naman, let's move to the third row ng Geely Okavango. It's actually easy to climb inside because of these seats. And once you're here, you actually have a good amount of room dito sa kanyang third row. This seat is all the way back, set to all the way back for the second row passengers. And I have a good amount of leg room. This much leg room. Headroom is plentiful for a third row seat for my 5'10" height. I have a lot of headroom. This is MPV-like pagdating sa kanyang packaging sa totoo lang, no? Which is no surprise kasi nga this is based on the Geely Jiaji in China, which is an MPV. So, you have good amounts of room. This is actually gonna be a good place for me to sit in pagdating sa kanyang third row, no? This is something that I won't even do
in a Mitsubishi Montero Sport or a Toyota Fortuner, sobrang hindi ko trip umupo sa mga third row ng mga yan. But here in the Geely Okavango, I'd actually have no problems on, okay, di man siguro mga papuntang Baguio, pero just going to Makati from Laguna, I'd actually be okay here. Seat height medyo mababa. You can see my knees are up to my ears, sa totoo lang. But yeah, I actually fit in here, and that's an achievement for this car's packaging.
And then as for trunk space, the Geely Okavango offers a lot dahil hindi ito isang body-on-frame SUV katulad ng Toyota Fortuner. With all seats in place, you are offered with 257 liters of space, which is considerably more than your typical PPV, though this is slightly less compared to the Toyota Innova. Fold the third row seats down, and this increases to a whopping 1,200 liters, which is almost twice as much as what the Toyota Innova has. Such are indeed the wonders of having a much more sophisticated unibody platform. And now with the second row seats folded, this grows to an eye-watering 2,050 liters, which practically dwarfs the Innovas at this point, and it completely shames all of its body-on-frame SUV counterparts. Powering all variants of the Geely Okavango is a 1.5-liter 3-cylinder turbocharged gasoline engine, which is mated to a 48-volt integrated starter generator, which therefore makes this a mild hybrid electric vehicle. Mild hybrids can't run on pure electric mode unlike your typical self-charging hybrid, such as the Toyota Corolla Cross, but rather, the electric motors are mainly used for assistance, thus reducing load on the gasoline engine. And this electrified powertrain drives the front wheels via a 7-speed wet dual-clutch automatic transmission.
So as for the Geely Okavango's driving experience, well, let's first talk about yung kanyang mild hybrid powertrain. So despite being complex on paper na meron siyang 48-volt integrated starter generator na system and electric motors basically, since this is a mild hybrid nga, but not a pure hybrid, no, na it can run on pure electricity on certain situations, so hindi naman siyang ganun. But anyhow, yung kanyang 48-volt mild hybrid powertrain works transparently, so it works really well. It is well engineered. Wala ka ng complexity, whatever. You're basically never reminded on how complex the powertrain actually is, no? So, in a nutshell, the powertrain is smooth, it's torquey like a diesel, especially since you have 300 Newton meters of torque nga ba naman. And it's basically really well calibrated, no? So the 7-speed wet dual clutch transmission works really well. Hindi siya yung clunky dahil nga it's the wet type, no? So wala siyang roughness, wala siyang clunkiness. It's one of the best dual clutches that I've ever experienced sa price point nito. The suspension deals with body roll pretty well. Okay yung kanyang ride quality, okay yung kanyang comfort, no? So if you're going through bumps, it absorbs them really well without the floatiness that you would expect in a soft suspension. And dahil nga it controls the body rin pretty well, wala siya nung masyadong pitching, diving, and rolling motions. Hindi siya yung tumitingala kapag, let's say, nag-accelerate ka. It's really a well-damped suspension. So when you go through a bump, wala ka rin nung vertical rocking motion na yun kapag yung dahil ka sa isang malalang lubak. Granted, that would happen if you load this up with 6 passengers pa, which I actually did. So I was able to test its ride with 7 passengers, and yun, lalong magsasoften ang ride niya. But yun nga, since it's fully loaded now, meron ka na ngayon nung rocking motion nga, meron ka na nung floatiness niya. But if you're only 5 people sa coaching ito, or in my case, mag-isa ako ngayon, the ride is really well controlled, it's really well damped. It's a bit better, I think, than the Toyota Innovas, but I'm splitting hairs at this point kasi even the Innova rides really well, sa totoo lang. As mentioned, the suspension deals well with the car's body movements. Hindi siya yung nagro-roll whatsoever. But it's not sporty. I wouldn't call this a sporty crossover SUV MPV-like thing. And it's mainly due to the fact na yung steering niya is more on the comfort side of things, no? So, there's not a lot of feedback. Doesn't respond fast to your input. So now I'm wiggling the steering wheel. Try ko siyang i-wiggle ngayon, and well, yeah, hindi siya masyadong responsive. But what it lacks in responsiveness, it makes up for in terms of stability naman, which we'll be getting through a bit later. And then the brakes, usually with these electrified cars, no, itong mga mild hybrid vehicles, or basically whatever degree of electrification, these cars tend to have regenerative brakes, no? So when you brake, it charges the battery and all that. And they tend to have weird brakes because of the initial bite niya. Yung initial bite niya kasi usually is yung ano niya lang yung regenerative brakes and not yet the friction brakes. But even then, the brakes feel natural, they feel normal, they're easy to modulate in stop and go traffic, hindi siya grabby whatsoever. It's a really well-developed brake system. And because this is competing against something like a Toyota Innova, comparisons to that car will be pretty much inevitable. So bear with me, I'm gonna be mentioning that car quite a number of times dito sa review na ito. And now we're gonna be entering through some nicer roads, and I think this is a good part to talk about the car's refinement. And yeah, the Okavango delivers on that point, on that aspect really well then. So with the Geely Okavango, one thing I like about this car is how comfortable the car is, no? So as mentioned, the ride is controlled. Hindi siya yung parang, let's say, nagbo-bottom out or may masyado kang vertical movements when you go through a bump, at least if it's not fully loaded. The car feels stable even at relatively high speeds, and this is gonna be a car that's perfect for you if you wanna go through a long distance trip papuntang Baguio. Yun nga lang, one thing that I'm noticing right now is, though road noise is well suppressed, hindi siya ganun kaingay, hindi masyadong rinig yung tire roar niya, but wind noise yun yung medyo prevalent sa akin for me. Medyo rinig yung wind noise niya dito sa window, sa windshield. Talagang you can really hear the wind most of the time. And that's especially true if you're driving on roads na medyo matapang yung mga crosswinds and all that. But yeah, as far as refinement goes, this is actually par for the course. And having mentioned that electrified powertrain, you sort of expect it, of course, to have good fuel economy numbers. And well, it actually delivers. So I've been averaging at around 12.5 kilometers per liter on an entire week's use with this car. And yeah, based on my experience, this sort of matches yung mga fuel economy figures sa mga PPV, na mga diesel PPV, like yung Fortuner, which also on my use achieved at around that same fuel economy figure. But yeah, di naman to full hybrid. This can't run on pure electric on certain kilometers. It can only coast on electric, but it can't run on pure electricity. Pero yeah, basically, just manage your expectations, and the Geely Okavango is actually a really fuel efficient MPV SUV thing. And that's the thing, no? Parang with other Chinese cars, medyo half-hearted yung decision ko if, like, let's say if I like that car, there's a bit of parang hesitancy to it. Parang it's mostly because I like those Chinese cars because of their price. Parang I tend to say na these cars are nice dahil kasi considering the price tag, yun ang madalas kong sasabihin. But with the Geely Okavango, no. Hindi siya maganda for a Chinese car. Hindi rin siya maganda because of the price. Maganda siya, period. And I can't believe I'm actually gonna say this, but if I were in the market for an MPV, if I were in the market for a vehicle like this, or at least in this segment, kasi okay, technically it's marketed as a distinct car, itong Okavango, so it's a crossover SUV sa itsura niya, but it's more of an MPV pagdating sa kanyang driving experience and yung kanyang interior flexibility. But the fact of the matter is, I can't believe I'm saying this, but if I were in the market for a vehicle sa segment nito, ng Innova or ng Okavango, I'm actually gonna pick this. Granted, okay, may mga tao na, ay hindi, let's go to the Toyota kasi it's a tried and tested brand, whatever. But if you're one of those people who are open to new things, or open to trying out something different, trying out something distinct based nga sa marketing nga nito, I'd actually go and recommend the Okavango in a heartbeat if you want a 7-seater vehicle na affordable and, you know, well-engineered. It's not even like well-engineered just because it's relative to the price maganda siya. No, it's really a well-engineered car, period.
Three variants of the Geely Okavango are available, and the range kicks off with the Comfort variant. There's also a mid-spec Urban trim, though the model we're testing today is a top trim Urban Plus model, and this comes with features such as a fully digital gauge cluster, panoramic sunroof, leather interior, power adjustable front seats, power tailgate, adaptive matrix LED headlights, just to name a few. And for the full specs, you can visit goflatoutph.com, which also links to our full review of this car. Now, the Geely Okavango has certainly been a hit among Filipino consumers. And while the Okavango is dressed as a crossover SUV, its functionality is actually on par with an MPV. This is actually one of the first Chinese vehicles we've ever driven that actually pose a threat to the mainstream competition. And if you're one of those who are willing to try out on new brands, the Geely Okavango's excellent driving dynamics and plethora of high-tech features make it somewhat a more rewarding car compared to the mainstream competition.